sad songs. When all hope is gone, why don't you tune in and turn them on? They reach into your room. Whoa, whoa, just feel that gentle touch. When all hope is gone, sad songs say so much. Welcome to another exciting message of the unrelenting alchemist, all spiritual all the time. We're talking about the Babylonian pantheon, the most powerful and popular deities of Mesopotamia. In Babylonian civilization, located in ancient Mesopotamia between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, this gave rise to a deeply intricate and richly symbolic pantheon of gods and goddesses. These gods and goddesses were rooted in earlier Sumerian beliefs. The Babylonian religion incorporated cosmic order, mythological drama, and a deep reverence for divine hierarchies. These deities governed everything from weather and war to fertility and justice. Among the vast array of divine figures, some rose to extraordinary prominence due to their influence on royal ideology, temple cults, as well as mythological texts. This video is going to explore the Babylonian pantheon with a particular focus on its most popular and powerful gods, which will include Marduk, Ishtar, Enlil, Ea, Nabu, Shamash, and many others, examining their roles, examining their stories, their attributes, as well as their legacies. So let's begin with the origins and development of the Babylonian pantheon. The Babylonian religious system evolved from earlier Sumerian traditions. Many of the gods in Babylon retained Sumerian names or were amalgamated with older deities. Babylonian mythology was codified in texts such as the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic, which elevated certain gods above others and established a divine hierarchy reflecting human politics, especially those of kingship and empire. Now, unlike the monotheistic religions, the Babylonian faith was polytheistic, featuring anthropomorphic gods with very complex personalities, lots of interfamily relationships, and human-like conflicts. Temples and ziggurats functioned as earthly residences of these gods and priesthoods, which carried out elaborate rituals to appease, consult, or glorify them. Now let's begin with Marduk, the king of the gods. Arguably the most powerful and politically significant god in the Babylonian pantheon was Marduk, the patron deity of the city of Babylon itself. His rise to supremacy is chronicled heavily in the Enuma Elish, in which he defeats the primordial chaos goddess Tiamat in a cosmic battle. By slaying Tiamat, Marduk creates the heavens and the earth from Tiamat's divided body. This myth establishes Marduk as a creator god and the champion of order over chaos. In terms of attributes and symbols, Marduk was associated with water, vegetation, judgment, and magic. He wielded the imḥullu, a divine wand weapon, and his symbol was a dragon snake known as the Mushussu, a creature combining features of serpent, lion, and bird. Now, what about the political role? Let's think about that for a second, right? Marduk's prominence coincided with Babylon's ascent as a political capital. This means kings like Hammurabi and Nebuchadnezzar II claimed divine mandate through him. The Akitu Festival, Babylon's New Year celebration, centered on Marduk's mythological victory and reaffirmed the king's legitimacy as his earthly representative. What about Ishtar? This is the goddess of love and war, second only to Marduk in fame and widespread worship was Ishtar, originally known as Inanna in Sumerian lore. Ishtar embodied polarities. She was the goddess of love, fertility, beauty, and sexuality, but also of war, vengeance, and political power. What about the myth's influence here? Well, Ishtar's descent into the underworld to rescue her lover Tammuz, or Dumuzi, is a cornerstone of Mesopotamian mythology. In this tale, she passes through 7 gates, relinquishing her clothing and symbols of power, symbolizing death and rebirth. Her resurrection restores fertility to the land, aligning her with the very seasonal cycles itself. In terms of worship, temples to Ishtar, such as the Eanna Temple in Uruk, were central to religious life. She had both male and female priesthoods, some of whom were said to be gender non-conforming, indicating a complex religious expression that transcended normative roles. What about the symbols? You've got the lion, you've got the 8-pointed star, and you've got the planet Venus, and these were all her sacred emblems. Let's go on to Enlil, Lord of Air and Destiny. Enlil was one of the oldest and most venerated gods, originally a central figure in the Sumerian pantheon. In Babylonian theology, he remained highly powerful, though partially supplanted by Marduk. Enlil was the god of wind, air, earth, and storms, and held control over the fates as well as their decrees. Now, what about Enlil's role in myth? Well, Enlil appears in the myth of the Great Flood, where he attempts to destroy humanity due to their noise and their disobedience. He's a complex figure. He could be benevolent at times, but he can also be extremely wrathful at other times. Kingly, yet distanced. What about his worship? Well, his main temple was the Akur at Nippur, a spiritual center of Mesopotamia. Even as Marduk rose politically, Enlil maintained theological authority as the source of world decrees and cosmic balance. What about Ea, also known as Enki, the god of wisdom and fresh waters? Ea, known as Enki in Sumerian tradition, was the god of wisdom, magic, as well as incantations, and sweet, fresh water. As a trickster deity and benefactor of humanity, Ea often acted as a counterbalance to the more severe gods like Enlil. What about the mythic role? Well, in the flood story, paralleling Noah's Ark and Gilgamesh, Ea warns the mortal Napshishim of the coming deluge, enabling him to build a boat and survive. He often secretly undermines the harsher decisions of the divine council in favor of preserving life. What about in symbolism? Well, associated with fish, flowing water, and the Apsu, which is the primordial deep, Ea was seen as a god who offered spiritual and practical wisdom, making him beloved by priests, magicians, and sages. What about the sacred site? Well, his city was Eridu, which is considered to be the oldest city in Mesopotamia tradition and the mythical origin of civilization itself. We move on to Shamash, which is the god of the sun and justice, right? Now, with Shamash, this was the Babylonian sun god, and this was the patron of justice, as well as truth and prophecy. He illuminated both the physical and moral world, making wrongdoing visible and ensuring divine fairness. Let's talk about justice and law. Shamash played a prominent role in the Code of Hammurabi. This is where the famous stele shows the king receiving the laws from the seated god. This imagery reinforced the idea that justice itself was divine in origin. Shamash was invoked in divination rituals and was believed to reveal omens through dreams and celestial signs. He helped oracles and judges reach true verdicts. In terms of symbols, his emblem was the solar disk, and his symbol was often paired with that of the moon and the god Sin and the planet Venus, which is also in and of itself known as Ishtar. Now, what about Sin, right, or Nana? Sin was the god of the moon, right? Sin or Nana was the moon god and or father of both Ishtar and Shamash. He was associated with cyclical time, night, and rhythm. Sin's waxing and wanting to, um, waning of these guided agricultural and ceremonial calendars easily made him essential to Babylonian life. In terms of sacred cities, he was worshipped in Ur and Haran. Ziggurats dedicated to Sin were, sort of like astronomical centers. And these highlighted the connection between his worship and the Mesopotamian science. So we now come upon this symbol, a crescent moon. Let's go to Nabu. Nabu is the god of writing and wisdom. Nabu was the son of Marduk and the divine scribe of the gods. I mean, in this sense, as a god of writing and scribes and wisdom, Nabu was revered in increasingly literate and bureaucratic society. In terms of mythic role, during the Akitu Festival, Nabu was believed to inscribe the fates of people and kings for the coming year. He held the Tablet of Destinies, a powerful symbol of divine authority. In terms of city and temple, his primary cult center was Borsippa, which is near Babylon, where the Iszida temple stood. In terms of legacy, in Nabu's name is embedded in Nebuchadnezzar. Nabu has protected the boundary, showing his eventual role in what you would call royal ideology. What about Tiamat and Apsu, the primordial chaos entities? Although not widely worshipped in temple cults, Tiamat and Apsu held at some point significant mythological significance as the primordial creators. Tiamat, the saltwater goddess, and Apsu, the freshwater god. They both were said to have come from this sort of first generation of the gods. And in terms of Tiamat's legacy, in the Enuma Elish, she creates an army of monsters to avenge Apsu's death, only to be slain by Marduk. And this tale mirrors other creation myths like the slaying of Leviathan or the Greek Typhon, which represents order triumphing over chaos. What about other notable deities that are worthy of mention in this particular installment episode of The Unrelenting Alchemist? We have Nergal, right? Nergal is the god of plague and the underworld associated with war and destruction. Ereshkigal was the queen of the underworld, the ruler of the land of the dead. Tammuz, or Tamuzi, was a dying and rising vegetation god, lover of Ishtar, whose Mish explains the seasons. All right. What about Adad? We have Ishkur, god of storms, rain, and agriculture, both a bringer of life and a destruction. What about the divine hierarchies and councils? Well, the Babylonian gods operated within a divine council structure, with Marduk at the head during later periods. Gods have very specific spheres of influence, yet their domains often overlapped. In political shifts influenced which gods were emphasized. When Babylon ruled, Marduk reigned supreme. Under Assyria, gods like Ashur had gained prominence. And about the legacy and influence. Well, the Babylonian pantheon influenced later religious systems profoundly. Elements of this mythology do seem to appear in, first I will start with the Hebrew Bible, right? We have the flood story, the Tower of Babel, and the imagery of Leviathan Tiamat, right? In Greek mythology, we have chaos versus order, Olympian hierarchy, and the Titanomachy. We also have Zoroastrianism and Gnosticism. Here we have dualistic themes of light versus darkness, good versus evil, right? And then we have astrology, which are Babylonian gods associated with planets and zodiacs, laying foundations for Hellenistic and modern astrology interpretations. So even the modern misconception of God as a lawgiver, creator, cosmic orderer, owes symbolic debts, these like Marduk, Shamash, and Ea, well, this still was something that was very strictly enforced, right? And so, in conclusion, the Babylonian pantheon stands as a monumental expression of ancient Mesopotamian spirituality, philosophy, and governance, with the Marduk as the sovereign king, and Ishtar as the goddess of contradictions, and Enlil and Ea shaping destinies and wisdom, and Shamash ensuring design justice. When they get to work, well, this is the point at which this design assembly is going to mirror the complexity of human life as well as the cosmos. And these gods did not have more than they had. Ye, in essence, shape the law. They shape power. They shape morality. The identity for centuries, leaving their imprint upon civilization far beyond the rivers of Mesopotamia. Their tales only continue to echo through history, not only in ancient texts, but also in the spiritual DNA of many world religions that followed. All right, so this is the Unrelenting Alchemist coming to an end, or am I just getting started? Let's call to all archives, right? Stay sharp, stay stubborn. You are an unrelenting alchemist. Don't you forget that. And I want to thank you for joining me in the Sacred Hour. This has been the Unrelenting Alchemist. Take care. And if I don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I love you.